Right. Good morning to you all. Thanks for joining me on this Halloween morning. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening ahead. But for right now, we're going to continue talking through AutoCAD and kind of working on that floor plan that we were developing last class. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. And there we go. And so you'll see in exercise 119, we're really going to start talking about how do we organize our file? How do we start to make it look good? And again, a lot of what I was kind of envisioning in this AutoCAD section, and a lot of what I teach in the AutoCAD section is really about the aesthetics of AutoCAD and how do we make an AutoCAD drawing look good and how do we transform that into something that's really an attractive thing that needs to go as part of a presentation. A lot of the AutoCAD classes focus just on the mechanics of learning to draw in AutoCAD. So I'm trying to take a little bit of a different spin on it and talk about the presentation rather than just how do we create something. And that's why obviously we don't spend that much time talking through the mechanics of how to draw in AutoCAD. We get the basics down and then we move into more of this. So the first thing that we'll talk today about is layers. But before I can talk about layers, I need to go ahead and open up AutoCAD. And I will tell you, for me, the remote desktop has been working really slow this morning. So I'm hoping that things will kind of resolve themselves here. But I'll just warning you ahead of time that I'm not sure my demos are going to work as well as I would like. So let's get AutoCAD started up here. You know, I think I'm going to disconnect from this and try to reconnect, see if I can get a better connection. So sorry, guys, hold on for just a little bit and I'll see if I can't get a better connection because this is not going to work. All right, I have a floor plan that's a little bit more developed than the one I was working on last class. And I'm doing this just so that you guys can see a little bit more developed floor plan. Now, first thing I'm going to do, because this is a base file for me, I'm going to do a save as. It's not necessary for you guys. You can just continue working on the same file, but I'm going to do a save as. We'll call this the fall of 2022. And we'll go ahead and click on save. Now, as we start to think about layers and organizing the file and those kinds of things, it's important to talk about the fact that there are conventions in the architectural practices that are out there. So if you went to work for a firm, the firm would have a specific strategy for how they organize and name their layers. And that strategy is something that everybody has to kind of follow, because if you pass your file on to somebody else, they have to understand where your layers are, how they're named, etc. And so for our purposes, I'm going to use what is the most common organization scheme for layers, but it doesn't necessarily mean that every firm would follow that organization scheme. So let's start talking in a little bit more depth about layers. And so you've seen up here that we have our drawing tools, and then we have our modify tools. So we've used both of those pretty extensively so far in the class. The next one is the annotation. So that's dimensions. We're not going to cover that at all. And the next set is all about layers. So if I click on this big button that says layer properties right here, that will bring up this layer properties window. And I'm going to make it a little bit bigger, I hope. Come on. There it is. Never mind. Well, maybe I'm not going to make it bigger. This is a Zoom issue. Okay, and so if we look at our layer properties, there's a lot of information that's happening here. But the key things are that we have a layer, and that layer has a name, and then we have all these little icons that come after it. And so I want to talk through what all of those mean. So the first thing is that we have, and I'm going to use the topography layer as an example because you'll start to see what happens on the screen when I do this. So we have the layer. It's not an active layer because it doesn't have a green check mark on it. It's not the current layer. We have the layer name, that's topography. The first little icon here is a light bulb, and that light bulb turns the layer on and off. So if I were to click on it, it turns the layer off completely. If I were to turn it back on, it turns the layer back on. Right next to that light bulb, I have a layer that is called freeze or thaw. And so it has a sun on it, not a light bulb. And if I were to click on it, it turns to a little snowflake. And then it turns back on. And so the logical question for you guys to be asking right now is, what on earth is the difference between the light bulb, which turns off the layer, and the sun, which turns off the layer? So this is a a really weird holdover from a long, long time ago, back when it was AutoCAD, before AutoCAD 2000. This is in the 80s and 90s, when AutoCAD was first around. Computers weren't very powerful. And as you started to work on really large drawings in AutoCAD, you needed to decide when you turned off a layer whether you wanted to keep the lines in the memory of the computer or whether you really wanted to turn them off. And so the on-off keeps the lines in the memory of the computer, keeps them in the RAM, so they're easier to turn back on. And the freeze and thaw removes them completely for the time being. So there's a subtle difference. In today's world, they are exactly the same. They don't do anything. Our computers are strong enough and powerful enough never to have this become an issue, but it's stuck around as an AutoCAD thing. So you can use either freeze or thaw. For me personally, I started using AutoCAD a long, long time ago, so the freeze thaw became important. So I use freeze thaw generally when I'm turning layers on and off, but for your purposes, it really makes no difference. Next little icon over is a lock. So that lock symbol allows us not to select those objects anymore. So if I tried to select the object like that, I can select it, but if I went to erase it, for example, nothing's going to happen. So it still exists as an object, but I can't modify it, delete it, etc. So we can go ahead and turn that back on. Now the next icon here is a little printer icon. And so this printer icon, what it does is it tells AutoCAD, do I print this layer or not? So if I went to export it to, and remember, printing is essentially like exporting. If I want to make it a JPEG or if I were to make it a PDF, I can choose whether the layer is printing or non-printing. So I could have all my guides, for example, and extra layers that are helping me draw. I could have those on a non-printing layer. And when I went to print, they wouldn't be there anymore. And that's something I use very frequently, actually, in AutoCAD drawings. So that is a non-printing layer. Currently, our two layers are printing layers. Next up, we have the layer color. So the layer color, which is currently white, right? When I go to print, will turn black. However, I can pick any other number of colors. And you can see here, we have an AutoCAD color index where we can pick any one of the colors. If I were to pick a color, let's say this orange, for example, and say, okay, all of my topo lines would turn orange. Now, sometimes people like to draw in colors so that they can see different lines standing out against other lines, and you can tell what object is on a layer. So for example, if I were to make this the current layer and then draw a line right here, like that, that line would be orange because it's on the wrong layer. Okay, so we'll get to changing that line to the correct layer in just a second. Now, so that's the color of the layers. Next up, we have what's called the line type, and it's currently set at continuous. That's just a default line. If we wanted other line types, if we wanted a hidden line, for example, we can actually load in other line types. So I can click on this load button, and you'll see that there are a whole number of lines that are available to us. One of the most common ones, at least that I use, is the hidden to line, this one. It's kind of a smaller dash line, so we could go ahead and we could load that in, and then you'd see that that's one of our choices for what type of line we would be using. I'm not going to change it right now because we don't need the topography to be a dashed line just yet, but we can change that. The next piece is what is called the line weight. This is the relative thickness of the lines. This one's kind of a tricky one. It matters when we go to print it, but sometimes when we're on screen, we just can't really see the line thicknesses. And so it's a matter of trusting that they're there versus really seeing the live preview of them. We have the ability to adjust transparency. And again, this is something that I very rarely actually adjust, but it is there and it's something that you can adjust. This has to do with new viewports. We're not going to skip that right now. And there is a spot for a description if we wanted to add a description. And that's the end of our setup of layers. So now it comes down to what should our layers be on a particular drawing. And so, like I said, I'm going to follow the kind of general guidelines of what most firms use for their layer structure. For our purposes in class, if you just wanted to name it whatever you wanted, that would be okay because you're not sharing the drawing with anybody else. But if you were sharing it with somebody else, you'd want to pay attention to what those naming conventions typically are. So let's take a look. And I actually have them written out in this exercise 119, just so you have a little bit of a cheat sheet. just in case. Let's see if I can get it to pull up here again. There we go. And so I have some examples here, a wall and a door. So let me show you. Typically what firms do is when they create a layer, so I'll be up here to create a layer. It's the little stack of papers with the yellow star next to it. That's a new layer. And typically, if it's an architecture firm, whatever they're drawing is considered architecture. So they name it A dash and then a descriptor. If you were working on the civil engineering, it would be probably a C dash. If you were working on electrical plans or utility plans, it might be E dash or U dash for utility. And so they're putting that prefix in just so that people know what the drawing layer would be or what it belongs to. So we're going to do a layer called A dash wall. That's our first layer. And notice that when I created it, it's inheriting the properties above. So it's currently colored in orange. I don't want it to be colored in orange. I'm going to change the color. And actually, I'm going to change the color right now to be red, just so that it's really obvious when we change lines. And so now it comes down to, I want to change the walls onto that A wall layer. So let me close the layer properties manager. And then what I'm going to do to change the walls is I'm going to go in and I'm going to select the walls. So we'll go through and we'll start selecting walls. And one of the advantages to selecting in this strategy and having the layer changed as a different color is that as we go, we can see what's been put on the layer. So I have some of the walls selected, not all of them. I'll come up to this little layers menu and I'll just change to the A wall layer. And you see that when I do, it changes and we can see the colors have changed, but we can also see what I've missed. So there's lines that I've missed. So let me hit escape so you can kind of see it a little bit better. So I need to go through and get the lines that I missed. Now, as you start to learn to draw, you may decide to draw on specific layers rather than relying on changing them after the fact. But there's nothing wrong with changing them after the fact. So let me come in here, select those guys. I have to select that end. This little post would be on the wall layer. And I know it's painful to watch me have to select things, but this is how we would go about doing it. All right, I'm getting there. And I think I've got most of it. A little bit more up the top here. And my remote desktop is being a little laggy, so I apologize for that. And let's get that. All right, then let's change all of those onto the wall layer. And then we can kind of double check what did I miss. So I missed a few little lines in here. So we'll select those. And if I find that I missed something else along the way, it's easy to go back and select those as well. I missed a little bit down here. And so this does take a little bit of time to get organized. And if I had done this along the way, it probably would have been a little bit faster. But now all of my walls are on that walls layer. Oops, plus these. And so the advantage of this is that once I have them all on the walls layer, I can then edit the properties of these walls so that we can change the thickness of all the walls. So once again, there's my last little bit of the A wall layer. There it is. And we can kind of visually see, yep, I did get all those pieces. And so let's go ahead and change those properties. Now, when it comes to line weights, we want to think about what those line weights are. And what I did to kind of help you out is I pulled up, if Chrome will pull up here, is I created this little image, and you can actually download it. There's at the bottom of the work here, there's a PDF. So you can open the PDF, and it gives you kind of a general thickness guide. And so you can see as you look at this floor plan that there are thicknesses to certain lines. The walls tend to be the thickest lines. And so these are all kind of my what I use to create line weights. But a wall I set at 0.40 millimeters in black. So let's go and edit those settings. Let's get back over into AutoCAD. Let's open up that layer properties again. And they're right here in a wall. We're going to come over here to the line weight. When I click on that, we're going to scroll down to 0.40. And we'll go ahead and say, okay. That makes the thickness 0.40. And my color, remember I said, was black. Now, when I mean black, I actually mean white. And this is where some people get confused. And I guarantee some people are going to come to my check-ins and ask me this question. There are two different colors that look like white here. There is an index color 7 in this top row. That one is the one we want. If you come down here, there's an index color 255. That will maintain white when you go to print it, so it won't turn to black. This is the magic white. It's index color 7. So I'm going to make sure I'm choosing that as my color here. We'll say okay. And now those lines are white. And so the next logical question is, why aren't the line weights showing? Well, they're actually not turned on. So what I need to do is go to the bottom, and just like remember on that first when we turned on the dynamic input button, if we click on that little 3 lines and we choose line weight, that'll enable the line weight tool down below. And that line weight tool is this one right here. So we have to enable the tool, and then we can turn the line weights on, and you'll see them show up as being a little bit thicker. You will see any line weight that's above about a 0.25, 0.3. Any of the smaller line weights will just look thin until you go to print. And so that's an unfortunate consequence in AutoCAD. We just can't see the lighter line weights. So I have my walls set at that thicker line weight. That's what I wanted them set at. We need to now move on to some of the other objects. So let's look at the doors next. So I would click on the add layer, and then I would call it A-door. Okay. So now let's select the doors and put those on the door layer. So I've selected those. And this is gonna be difficult today. It's now really laggy. So I don't know whether it's my internet or what, but so I'm selecting those doors, and I want those to end up on the doors layer. It looks like I have another door right there. There we go. And I do have these closet doors. So technically they would be doors as well. So we'll go ahead and select those. And we'll select those. All right, now I need to change on the doors layer. So I'll close the layer properties manager, go up to my layers here, and I'll change those to be on the A-door layer. Okay. So we need to edit the line thickness. So I'll go back up to my layer properties. And under A-door, we have to change that line weight. So what do we change the line weight to? Well, I'll pull back up my little chart here. And it says that the door is 0.18 millimeters in black. So we'll come back to AutoCAD. And we'll change the A-door line weight to 0.18 millimeters. Like, now, we can confirm that everything was moved onto this layer, and this is always the easiest by changing the color. And I didn't do that at first, but sometimes it helps to see. Oops. That didn't actually change. There we go. You can just confirm that everything is on the correct layer by changing the color. So let's go back to index color 7, like that, and we'll say okay. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, I have indicated that the door thickness is 0.18, but the door swing is 0.09. So it's just a little bit thinner. So in this case, everything is currently on the door layer, and they're by default 0.18. If I want just the swings to change, I can select them. So, and I'm not going to change their layer, but instead with them selected, I'll come up over into the properties section right here, and I'll change the properties of those swings to be 0.09. Okay, so I can override the default line weight of the layer by directly changing the line weight of the object. Likewise, I could go in and I could change the color of just the objects that I have selected if I wanted to. We're going to leave them, actually, we're going to leave them by layer, sorry, not white. We're going to leave them by layer. So it just inherits the layer properties. Okay, so now I have the A-wall layer. The next would be, or excuse me, the A-door layer. The next piece would be to add the A-window layer. So we go A-window. There we go. And then I would go around and I would select, let's go ahead and close this right now. I would select all the windows. So I'd take these guys as windows. This is really gonna be difficult today. Sorry, I'm trying to move the mouse slowly, but it's not working for me. All right, so now I have that as a window, and I could change that to the A-window layer. And I would do that for the rest of the windows. I don't want you to have to sit and watch me struggle to select things, but that's how I would go about selecting the windows. So I'd select every one of these windows and get them on the A-windows layer. With that being said, if I came down to my little cheat sheet, my mouse will move. There we go. You can see that on the window, I have right here the window itself at 0.00. That's the thinnest line that they'll make. So I would go in and I would go to my layer properties here, and my A-window layer, I would change the thickness to the 0.00. That's a super, super thin line. And then I can go ahead and say, okay. So the first part of what we're working on today is essentially organizing your file. So you've already drawn the floor plan, hopefully. If you haven't, guess what? You get a little extra time today to work on your floor plan a little bit more. And then after that, we're going to make sure we're organizing our file such that we're setting up our layers, A-wall, A-door, A-window, etc. I tend to also do an A-fixtures and an A-furniture, and that's what we're going to come to next. So we've done our layers. The next piece is bringing in what are called blocks. And blocks are drawings that have been done ahead of time that you can use to enhance your drawing. And so First in Architecture is a great source for these, but if you do an AutoCAD search for a DWG block or AutoCAD block, you're going to find a lot of these on the internet. So I've just found that the First in Architecture ones are pretty good quality. So let's go to that website, maybe. It's killing me today. Let's go ahead and accept here. There we go. And so you can see that they have lots of different blocks that are set up. They have trees and planes and construction site equipment and whatever, but they also have a lot of general building materials that can be useful. They have furniture, etc. So let's move this down here a little bit. They have free kitchen island blocks, for example. So let's look at that one. Oops. Let's look at the kitchen island blocks. I'm not asking you to pay for anything, so you can very easily just use these free ones. So let's scroll down here. Here's a set of free kitchen island blocks. It looks like they only have it available in metric, which is unfortunate, but we might have to do a little bit of scaling. So let me jump back up here. And we can click on this download now in metric. So we'll download that. While we're waiting for that to download, I'm going to look at one of these other ones. Here's a bathroom set. So we can click on this. This is sinks and toilets and that sort of thing. Right now, this one has both the metric and the imperial. We'd like to download the imperial because that's the units that we're working in. Okay, and so you'll see here that both of those download as zip files into my downloads folder. So I need to extract the zip files. I'll right click and say extract all. Now I have a tendency to keep these on my OneDrive because we're using them as a referenced file, as a block reference in AutoCAD. So we want to save them not to the school computer, but into our OneDrive. I use a folder called resources, and then I have a folder called AutoCAD, and then I have a folder called blocks. And you see that I have a whole bunch of different things here. And so this first one that I was doing is bathroom. So I'm going to double click on bathroom and we'll drop it right here. We'll extract it. There we go. And I'll do the same thing for this kitchen islands. So let me right click on it and let's say extract all. I'm going to browse for a location. I'm going to go back into blocks here. And I don't think I have a folder for kitchen. Oh, I do have a folder for kitchen. There it is. And we'll go ahead and put it inside there. Perfect. So I have both of those extracted onto my flash drive now. The other thing that I'd point out is that a lot of times if you have a specific item that you're looking for, you can go on manufacturer's website. So Kohler is a good example of this. If you were looking for a specific Kohler toilet, you could go to Kohler.com. And you could go to, let's see, products here. We could go to bathroom. We could go to toilets. These websites are always so funny. We get the glamour shots of the toilets, right? Okay, so let's say you really like this toilet. You can see down here we have something called design files. And they'll have, right, here we go, 2D plan, 2D front, 2D side, and they also have a 3D file that you can download. All pretty cool. So you could download the 2D plan in a DWG, download one file, and now you have that toilet that you could then insert into your scene as well. So let's go ahead and show that in its folder. There it is. We're going to copy it and we're going to put it over again into my resources folder. We'll go into AutoCAD and we'll go into bathroom. You see I have a folder for Kohler. We'll go ahead and paste it. A lot of times when I'm doing plans, I spec Kohler because they're readily available. So that's why I have a folder for Kohler. But anyway, so now we come back to our plan here. How do we actually stick these things into a plan? Well, when we do that, we're going to jump over from the home ribbon at the top over into the insert ribbon. And you can see that we now have some ability to bring in files. So before you actually bring in the files, sometimes it's not a bad idea to actually open the file and have a look. The first in architecture ones, I'm not particularly worried about, but if you were doing a file that you've never, from a website that you've never opened before, it doesn't hurt to go ahead and actually just open the file. So I'm going to go ahead and in AutoCAD, I'll click on the open button. And I'm going to jump over into my flash drive. Oops, it's a habit to click there. Sorry, we got to go down into resources. AutoCAD. Right, there's that first in architecture. We can go ahead and open it, and you could just confirm that, yes, in fact, it's loading and that you could work with it. So all that's pretty good. Okay, so let's come back to our original file here. We're going to click on this first button, which is Insert Block. And so if I click on that Insert Block, come on. Okay, we're going to insert a block from a library. And we're going to browse for that first file that I had. Let's go into my resources, AutoCAD, blocks. I'm going to do the bathroom one first. And there it is. We'll go ahead and click on open. And it's now loaded up the blocks. And so you can see down here on the right side that there are all the items from that file. So if, for example, I wanted this toilet, right, I can click on that toilet and it's dropping the toilet in. It's obviously not at the correct scale. And this is always the risk when you're borrowing files from somebody else, is that they come in the wrong scale. So we would need to scale this down. Let's scale it. And what we need to kind of know is what one of the sides would be. So when I typed in scale, I'm then going to follow with reference. And what I can do with the reference is I can say, you know, this distance from here to here, I want that new distance to be, I don't know, 8 inches. And now that feels a little bit more like the toilet that it should be. Unfortunately, we run into these kinds of scale issues. The blocks from manufacturers tend to be a little bit more accurate in terms of scale. So let's try inserting that. I'm going to go down in insert blocks from libraries again. I have to load the library separately. Yeah, I'm going to have to load the library. Let me come over here and we need to load another library. So just so you guys can see it, right here, you can see that it's the bathroom blocks. If I click this little book icon, we can load the toilet. This was the Kohler toilet. And there it is. And now I could actually use this in the scene. And yes, it's from a manufacturer, so it's more the correct size. So I could zoom in here and I could drop that block in wherever I wanted the toilet to go. We'll go ahead and say okay. And there it is. We could then load up those kitchen blocks. So let's jump over here. Let's go into kitchen. And there were those kitchen islands. And why are they not giving us all the choices? See, then this is generally the first in architecture ones are really accurate, but for some reason they're having issues. I'm going to place the whole thing in, and then let's see if we can select. No, I'm just in bad luck right now. Let me try exploding this. So see if I can break it into its pieces. No, that was a bad idea. Undo. So that would just be unfortunately, that would be a bad one because they're not loading correctly. However, I could trace over this and use it as my island, or we could just find another block. And so I apologize. Again, I do these all live like this because I want you to see things that don't work. So when I have trouble. So let's go back to that first in architecture. So far, both of the first in architecture have failed miserably. Let's go into the CAD blocks furniture. And let's see if we can get one that will work. All right, here's bed and mattress sizes. Let's try that one. So we'll scroll down. And there it is. So let's show it in its folder. Let me right click on it and say extract all. And of course, the alternative to this is that you could just draw one of these beds or whatever from scratch. You don't have to use a block. I just, in the interest of saving time, I like to introduce this as a concept. So let's do beds. And we'll extract them there. You've seen I've done this one before. Let's go ahead and replace it. There it is. So let's load that one up. Let's go back to AutoCAD. I'll click on that little library icon, the books icon, and we will load the beds. There it is. Go ahead and say open. And now we have the beds. So I could take the queen, for example, and there it is. There's the queen bed. And this one, the scale is working nicely. And I can drop that into my bedroom. There it is. So let's go ahead and manipulate this. I'm going to rotate it. So I'll select it. I'll type rotate. Oops. Alternatively, I could use my tools up here. There's rotate. So I'm going to rotate it so that it's on its edge. Then I'll move it. So I'll select it. I'll click on move. I'm going to turn on my midpoint snap. I'll click on my little object snaps. I'll check the box for midpoint. And that will let me, oops, when I go to move, I can snap to the middle of the bed, and then I could place that in the middle of this wall. For example, there it is. I could also take that bed and I could copy it up to here. So I could type in copy. And we can put it right out there as well. So they have single beds, they have king beds, etc. So again, those are all, that's a good set of blocks. And you can play around with it. There are other furniture blocks that are available. Let's see here. Those are the chairs. These are the sofas. There's more beds. Here's dining room tables, restaurant and bar. Here's, there's dining tables. You get the idea, right? Desks, whatever. So you can download any one of these and look at this, Mega Pack Furniture Bundle. Oh, that one might not be free though. So anyway, you can play around and you can get these. And the idea is that you can load them in to start to add realism to your building. So you're putting scale and you're putting realism in your building by doing this. So that's the block section. So that right here is under part 2, blocks. Okay. Part 3 is the hatches, and that's optional. And to be honest, sometimes this scratches your AutoCAD drawing. So sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. That's why I put it in as optional. I'm going to demo it just so you can see it. I'm a little worried because the remote desktop is working so slowly for me today. But what hatching does is it allows us to do things like put this flooring in. And it's just a subtle little bit of extra work that we can do. We could also fill in walls if we wanted to. So let's explore the idea of a hatch. So first off, we're going to go into our layer properties, and I'm going to create a layer right here. I'm going to call this A-flooring. And actually, I never made a layer for my furniture. So I would do A-fern for my furniture, and then the beds would end up on that layer. So let's look at the flooring. We want the line weight of the flooring to be 0.00. And you'll see that on my little sheet here that I've actually taken it a step further, and that is that it's 0.00, but it has a color of 251 gray. So it's actually kind of a dark gray-ish, but it'll turn out much better when it goes to print. So when I come back here, I'm going to look at my flooring layer. Oops. And I'm going to change the color to this 251 gray. And so that's what I mean by C:251. That's the 251 gray. All right. So then it comes down to actually hatching. So let's make the flooring layer active. And as we start to explore hatching, the first thing that I'll hatch is inside the wall, just so you can kind of see what happens here. So if I type in hatch, it's also available here in the home ribbon. Show you right there is the hatch tool. So what I can do is when I click on it, I get this hatch create ribbon that shows up. If I wanted to fill the walls in solid, for example, I can click on solid, and then I just move my mouse over the region that I want to fill, and I click, and it fills that region in with my color. So in this case, 250 gray. Notice that if I fill over a different section of my building, it'll fill that section in as well. So that would be if I wanted my buildings to be solid. I'm going to hit escape for right now, and then we'll go ahead and come back and delete this. Okay, now let's go back to that hatch tool again. And you see that instead of just having solid here, I actually have a whole variety of hatches that I can pick, some of which are representative of specific materials. So for example, the concrete hatch is actually a symbol that we as architects would recognize to be concrete in section. So you could use something specific like that, but you can also kind of abstract some of these other patterns. You can load other hatches in. We're not going to cover that in this class, but the ones that I'm going to encourage you to use are just kind of the basic ones. So for example, we could use this basic diagonal. And let's say that I was going to fill this region in. Okay, I picked that as my hatch, but notice that it's filling kind of in solid. Right over here, we have the ability to scale. So I'm going to change the scale from 1 to, let's try 5. And when I come over my drawing, you can see, oh, it's fine line. So it's not quite enough. Let's go from 5 to 10. And now you see all of those kind of horizontal lines. It's still not quite enough. Let's go up to 20. And there we go. You can start to see that as if it were flooring. Now this flooring is on its diagonal, so I could change the angle of the floor. We could type in 45, for example, and it would now be going vertical. So I could fill in this region. I could take this piece, that piece, and inside this door there, and it could all be that kind of light texture. If I didn't like these horizontal lines, right, we can select those. Let me erase those. I could pick, go back to hatch again. I could pick, say, one of these brick patterns. So now at scale 20, it's way too big. So let's drop that back down to maybe scale 5 and take a look. Still too big. Let's try scale 1. There you go. That's not too bad. But again, it's at an angle. So let's switch it so that it's at 0. And then I could fill this patio as if it were little concrete tiles or pavers or something. And we can fill in those regions right like that. And then I can go ahead and hit enter to finish. Now, all that being said, if I found after the fact that I didn't like a particular hatch, all I have to do is select it. And then I can go in and modify it. Say, I wanted it to be a little bit bigger. I wanted it to be at 1.5. Well, it'll go back and it'll do that for us. Or I could say I want it to be 1.25. Or whatever that value is. Okay, so you can actually use this to your advantage because you can fill in the floor and give yourself a little bit of texture. Now, where this has a tendency to kind of fail is when we start to get in and around blocks. And sometimes it recognizes the blocks, sometimes it doesn't. So I like to point this out as we go along. I'm going to attempt to do it for the floor in the house, but it may not work. So let's go ahead and save my file first. I'll click on the little disk icon to save it. And now that it's been saved, we'll go back into the hatch tool right here. And I'm going to go back to the diagonal flooring, just the simple diagonal. We're going to rotate by 45. And we had it at a scale of 20. And I'm going to try to put it in this room. So in this case, when I click and I put it in, it did a pretty good job of recognizing the bed. So I'm reasonably happy by that. Again, depending on the hatch that you use, it may or may not work. So I've gone ahead and I've done that part of it. Let's do this part. So it's kind of continuous through the house. Let's do that part. And let's do in the bathroom there. Ah, there's one where it broke down. See how it hatched through the toilet? So it didn't recognize it as well as I would like. And so that's something where we'll have to decide, do we leave it or do we try to go in and fix it? In this scenario, we could use a different toilet. This is a pretty ugly toilet to begin with. So that's where the hatching can break down and it may not be advantageous for you. That's also why I always put it on another layer. And sometimes you decide after the fact that you really don't like it, in which case you can turn off that flooring layer. Oops, sorry, it's the active layer. So let's change it from being the active layer. There we go. And let's go ahead and let's turn off flooring. There we go. And we're back to where we didn't have it. So that's hatching. And so you can use that to your advantage, and it may or may not work in your particular case, but I like to introduce it as a concept. So from here, I would continue to kind of tweak and make changes and edit my floor plan, get some line weights installed, make sure my organization is correct. And that's really what today is about. You should have a little bit of extra time to continue working on your floor plan. You can see on my little example here, this is obviously smaller in scale. It looks a lot like the one we worked on the first day, but I did put a little kitchen in. I found a little stove to put in. I put a sink in and a refrigerator and some of that kind of stuff. There are some dashed lines in here. So I had upper cabinets, for example. I had this roof line. And so when I refer to those, you can see that I have hidden to listed. That's just that line type. So if I went back to my fixtures layer, which I don't have, that would be where cabinets would go. So let's go A-fixture. Let me change my, so I take all the kitchen cabinets like that, and we're going to change those to the A-fixtures layer. There they are. And then I would take upper cabinets and I would want those to have a different line type. So I'd select those upper cabinets. Looks like I'm missing a line there anyway. And then I would come up to my line type under properties. And remember, I'm over here and I would choose the hidden to as my line type. It doesn't show up here because the scale of our drawing is not set right. So that's okay. We'll get to that when we go to either print or ultimately when we do paper space and model space. Looks like I'm missing a little bit of a line right here. So let's add that back in. There we go. And let's make sure that that is again on the A fixtures layer. And then I want to make sure that it also has the hidden to line type. So I have a few other little overhangs that would need that hidden to. So this line, for example, would need hidden to, and I could manually go in and make those adjustments. Looks like there's a few lines that I'm missing here that don't have the thickness, like this line obviously is part of the walls layer and it never got changed. So let's go ahead and change that. Oh, it is on the A wall. I wonder why it's not showing as thickness. All right, what we will do now that I have this set up and I have my furniture in place, we'll go ahead and print it like we did last time. I should probably trim out this one contour line that's going through my building as well. So let's go ahead and use a trim command. Come in here and I'll trim it there. And I'll come back to here and I will trim it right there. I'll hit enter or return to finish. And then I'll select the contour line and then we can just erase it. Press the delete key on the keyboard or type erase. And there we are. So now I would go ahead and I'd make a JPEG of it. That's what you'll be turning in as part of Canvas. So this time you probably will have some line weights, which is what I'm looking for. And so we'll go ahead and go to the little printer icon. There it is. And I'm going to change the name of my printer down here to the publish to web JPEG. And we'll go ahead and use the default size. Now, the only thing that's different that we are going to do differently this time is over here on the right side under plot style table or pen assignments. It currently says none. We're going to change it to that first option, the ACAD.CTB. That will recognize the line weights in our drawings now. So what we're plotting, display would be fine. I can also do a window. The advantage of the window is I can actually make sure that I'm getting the whole floor plan. There we go. And then we'll go ahead and say, okay. It'll ask me where to save it. Let's go ahead into today's folder. All right, and I'll go ahead and click on save. And then that saves that JPEG for me. I want to make sure that I'm saving the AutoCAD file as well. So I'll click on the save disk icon. And then I'll go ahead and I'm going to close AutoCAD. And I want to confirm that when I close AutoCAD, everything gets synced in my OneDrive before I actually close off the computer. It should have, but we want to just make sure that our floor plan got uploaded, which it did. Let's look at that drawing that we created. And let's see if we can find it. There it is. Let's go ahead and open that up and let's just see what it looks like. And there it is. And so we should start to see, in this case, you can see that our, I didn't change the color of our topo line, so it is orange. And if we were to zoom in, Control plus here, you can start to see that we do have some line weights. It's a JPEG, so things are a little bit jagged. That's to be expected on JPEG. We're going to clean that up with when we ultimately go into our paper space and creating our PDFs and whatever. We won't have this kind of fuzziness. But anyway, you get the idea. I just wanted to confirm that it did in fact work and load and that we were seeing our line weights. Okay, so that's the extent of what I have you guys doing for today. Again, I have this line weight guide for your enjoyment. You can download the PDF version of it and save it to your flash drive. Right there, you can print it just as an extra guide so you can kind of see. One of the other things that I do think is a good idea is as you start to learn what line weights look good, they're also somewhat dependent on how your printer chooses to print them out, especially when we get into the grays. So it's not a bad idea to do a test print of something like this at the scale that you're ultimately going to be printing, just to make sure you like the line weights, okay? And that they're turning out all right. So that's there for you. You can save that. I do have another one that you'll see next class that has to do with the elevations, and we'll talk about line weights of the elevations. Next class, we will start drawing the elevations. So I strongly, strongly encourage you to finish the floor plan today. Doesn't mean you can't make changes to it, but really get it well resolved, because we're going to start working on it in elevation form on Wednesday. All right, so that being said, you're free to go. We do have our check-ins this week, both today and on Wednesday. I'll be here and sticking around. So if you guys have any questions, stick around and we'll get through them.